Sonata Dusk was definitely one of the most popular things to come out of Equestria Girls' Rainbow Rocks, following closely behind Sunset Shimmer's new characterization, of course. Thus, as bronies do, with each new popular character comes a new meme. With this in mind, DJLowrider seeks to tell the story of what happened after the sirens ran off the stage at the end of the movie and cleaned their garish costumes of whatever food debris had stuck to them. So, with minimal spoilers, let's take a look at the various aspects of this experiment's result, taking another career option. And I'm guessing he thought that title was terribly clever. At approximately 7,100 words, taking another career option is a villain redemption story, something that's been very common in the fandom even before they occurred with about half of the show's major antagonists. I have watched this particular subgenre of story go through 2 influxes following each of the Equestria Girls movies. Unfortunately, a lot of them ended up being poorly disguised excuses for romance stories. Some of them, however, are well-disguised excuses for romance plots that send the story into a nosedive as soon as they're revealed. But once you've sifted through all of those, you can find some amazing gems like The Keepers of Discord by Hoopy McGee. There would be a very interesting discussion as to why these types of stories are so common. My guesses would be that depending on the story, it's either that people gravitate towards the idea of redemption or a case of romantic wish fulfillment. It's also of note, at least in my own observations, this seems to happen with Sonata Dusk on a proportional scale much more often than it happens with any other villain so far. Some good guesses as to why this may be will be mentioned later on in this video, as well as explicitly stated in the story itself should you decide to read it. So, going into the story, I knew that it was either going to be a touching one-shot or ruined by being filled with these same contrivances. But something that definitely helps the premise is the inclusion of Sunset Shimmer, mostly because someone who's working to redeem themselves from their past sins is a lot more likely to be compassionate and forgiving towards others in the same position. The story features a decent execution of the third-person limited style, delivering the actions and dialogue from the perspective of an outside observer without diving into the thoughts of each character. I was able to find no inconsistencies here, not even in the common use of the looser form of third-person limited, which focuses on the overall thoughts and experiences of the main character. However, while there are none of the common inconsistencies in the style, there is blatant lack of description and atmosphere in this story. The most prominent of these instances being when Sunset first enters the story's main setting, a fast food restaurant. This is the case where a reader should know as much as possible about the environment without the description being overbearing, such as what does the restaurant look like, what does it sound like, what does it smell like, are there other people present, and if so, who? If we're in the third-person limited perspective, how is Sunset Shimmer visually reacting to all of this information? Even more important than this is the introduction of the restaurant's manager, Salsa Verde, who, apart from a name and a hint of a backstory later on, is given no description at all. To drive home how crippling it can be to miss these details, for the rest of the story, I'm going to picture this character as a floating bowl of green salsa that speaks with a Speedy Gonzales accent. And now so will everyone else who reads this story after watching this video. But then we get details when they're not needed. For example, an entire paragraph dedicated to why Fluttershy likes her van, or the shape and colors of Sonata's high ponytail. As in, this high ponytail? As in the literal first thing that most bronies noticed about Sonata's character and then proceeded to repeatedly make jokes about how her sweater is bigger on the inside? That ponytail? I already know what that ponytail looks like. It doesn't need to be mentioned in your story when both the audience and the characters already know what it looks like. Doing so is a slippery slope to Lavender Unicorn Syndrome, so unless something's different about the hair from the last time we saw her, don't mention it. As for the format, it was also almost flawless, but formatting is not as susceptible to as many pitfalls as the style is. I only found one typo in my read-throughs, and it's barely worth mentioning. However, again, we've got the typical double spacing paragraphs that lack indentation that I see in almost every fanfiction. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if I should even bother bringing it up. But then again, just because everyone does something doesn't make it right. The aforementioned lack of description also works against character interactions. As far as I can tell while reading conversations, the characters are standing still. Compare this to the way that most people interact in real life, or perhaps even in the show. A lot of characterization goes into things like facial expressions, hand gestures, and overall body language. All of these things fluctuate continuously throughout conversations of any kind, and much like punctuation in the English language, each one of these movements from the large to the small means something within the context of which it's being used. When you fail to convey this in your prose, you're not delivering the play with true characters anymore. To give it some perspective, it's more like putting on a show with finger puppets. Sonata's motivations throughout the story are pretty questionable as well. I'm trying not to spoil anything, so I'll simply say that even though the Dazzlings didn't exactly respect each other throughout Rainbow Rocks, they definitely all seem to be acting without any sort of coercion. Sonata has been getting a lot of this treatment. My guess is that Sonata's cute and ditzy nature makes her attractive to many bronies. So similar to characters like Trixie or Discord, this creates a distinct liking for the character that makes someone want them to be a good guy, so to speak. Unlike, however, the other sirens, who are more similar to villains like Queen Chrysalis or Lord Tyrek in the sense that they wreak malevolence with everything that they do. People are simply a lot less likely to want to see the good in someone like this. However, I don't believe that Sonata merely showing likable qualities is an indication that she has underlying benign motivations. Other than some nice, subtle foreshadowing towards the beginning of the story, there is virtually no character development, which is normal for shorter stories, but even without changing much about the story, I see potential for arcs with both of the main characters that's a lot deeper than what there was. The conflict is in the same boat in that it hardly exists until the very end. Even then, it's done within 2 paragraphs and a few lines of dialogue. Unlike character development, short stories need to contain much more conflict, usually by being centered around the conflict. Ultimately, I wouldn't call this story good or bad. Its biggest weaknesses are its lack of engaging description and dialogue as well as its poorly set up and paid off conflict, but it's got a nice ending and a decent main 6 characterization. If you're one of those bronies that got themselves in over their heads with Sonata's ditzy charms, then I can definitely recommend this story, as you'll be a lot less likely to notice everything that I've mentioned so far, and even if you did, you'll not likely be bothered by it. However, I feel like this story would have been much better if it had been just a little bit longer, and not just with the lengthening that would come naturally from adding proper description and characterization, but also in the sequence of events that took place. While I believe that it would be within Sunset's character to give Sonata a chance, I don't believe that Sunset would do it right away. I also wouldn't put it past Sonata to be competitive in this situation and try to sabotage Sunset at least once out of sheer habit. The potential for hilarious hijinks is abundant, and it would provide a much better opportunity for developing their friendship. For example, Sonata sabotages Sunset's sure success once deliberately, thus receiving a reprimand from Salsa Verde, and then once accidentally before they're both threatened with being fired. Then they realize that they have to work together. Add in a little bit of both Sunset and Sonata learning something from each other that improves their skills on the job, and I would buy the story as it is, even though there's still a lot that could be added. On an almost completely unrelated side note, I don't believe that Sunset Shimmer would look good in a white denim jacket. But this, the characterization that the fandom has given Sonata, and anything you believe I was wrong about or have missed are things that I look forward to knowing your thoughts on so that we may discuss it further. If you have any thoughts on this video or would like to hear something discussed, you can leave a comment below or drop comments, questions, topic suggestions, and review suggestions by following BronyBuck on Tumblr or sending an email to bronydebates@yahoo.com. Be sure to check out Irish John's channel for a variety of cool videos and funny super shorts. And be sure to check out Corpulent Brony's channel for some interesting My Little Pony videos and analysis. Also, feel free to check out my Patreon to see how you can support my channel and what you'll get in return. Big thanks to all of those supporting me already. Have a great day, and I look forward to hearing from all of you soon.